Dirt Killer. Let's kill some dirt.
There it is. Hey everybody, this is the original Josh and Old Man Wags back with Dirt Killer pressure washers, and today we're going over a soft wash seminar to look at a couple different chemicals that are used for common cleaning applications. We're going to discuss some generic or general mixing recommendations. Of course, everybody knows that each cleaning application will vary a little bit from time to time, but want to give you lay down a foundation of normal mixation. So I'm going to turn it over to Wags and we'll go from there.
All right, so thank you guys, everybody that's listening live. We appreciate the audience. What we're going to do is, like I said, going to go through the chemistry of cleaning some things. At the end of our seminar, we are going to ask a question. If you get the question right, you're going to receive a free thing of chemical. And then after that, we are going to open up the entire seminar to Q&A through Facebook, I believe.
Yep.
So not just questions about the seminar, anything you guys want to ask that's industry related, we will go ahead and try to answer them for you. So to kind of get us started, we're going to look at the different types of cleaners and some of the roles that each one of them actually plays. This will be a recap from one of our other seminars, but really you got three different types of cleaning chemicals in the industry, and I'll kind of let Lee take it away on that.
So the ones that we're going to take a look at today, we're going to kind of break things down into three separate groups. We've got our sanitizers, degreasers, and acids. So sanitizers, those are for attacking organic growth, your algae, bacteria, moss, those sorts of things that are growing on certain types of surfaces. Degreasers that are detergents that break down certain types of soil on the surface and also try to emulsify, and those also have our surfactants to help carry, break the surface tension of the water and carry the material away from the surface. And then we have acids, which are used for breaking down the surface that a particular material is stuck to so that we can release a stain. So we really wanted to try to make an emphasis on the fact that a lot of our strong chemicals get the general misnomer of what's that acid you use for cleaning kitchens? Hood and duct, bitchin' kitchen. They're not really an acid. They just get that kind of connotation or connotation because they're super duper strong, but really the acid and degreaser's usually your alkaline cleaners. So we're looking at different sides of the pH scale and how they behave with certain cleaning applications. You got anything to add to that?
Yeah, to kind of touch on what we're going to talk about. When it comes to sanitizers, one of the most popular ones in the industry is going to be sodium hypochlorite, followed by certain peroxides or some of the milder acids that Josh was talking about. And then when it comes to degreasers, like you said, there's really aggressive high pH levels that are going to be your alkalins. Like we got Bitchin' Kitchen, Nasty, Big Green Bruce. Sorry, he actually falls in a little milder. But then we also have stuff that is a little more delicate, a little easier on the surface, and we're looking at things like the Big Green Bruce, we got Boss, we got Orange Potion, things that are a little softer to work with.
Powerbolt too.
Powerbolt's actually a really good one for that. And then when it comes to the acids, the one that we're going to kind of touch on is hydrofluoric acid or ammonium bifluoride. Muriatic was exceptionally popular back in the day, but that's kind of starting to get phased out just because of some of the dangers that are associated with it. So kind of keeping all that in mind, that's where our train of thought's going to go with this. But let's go on to our first topic of the seminar, and we're going to talk about vinyl surfaces. So you want to take this one? He's having some technical difficulties, so
Still learning how to use the internet.
I think he's trying to see if we're actually live.
Yeah. So, vinyl siding, of course, is a relatively easy surface to clean, and that has to do with the type of material that it's made out of course, vinyl, plastic, and also the porosity of the surface, which is how many little pores and holes that it has. So vinyl is designed to be resistant to things attaching to it. And but there are still little pores that your live agents get stuck to, where your atmospheric hydrocarbons, stuff from like car exhausts and airplanes, that kind of stuff, those get stuck into there, and that's what gives you the faded, dirty look. So usually with vinyl, high pH cleaners were always the most popular, but we found over the years that you don't really have to put a super strong high pH cleaner on vinyl siding at a very high concentration to get it clean. You do want it to be there, but you know your sanitizer, your bleach is not only helping to clean the surface, but it's killing all the other things that, you know, you're battling two different compounds here. You got the stuff that's living on the surface as well as the dirt. So that's why you're using a two-part solution of your sodium hypochlorite, your bleach, and your Boss. Very most common mixture that we promote is bleach and Boss. You get your pH as well as your surfactant, your foaming, and your emulsification from the detergent, and that's what's going to help to break the stuff down and carry it away from the surface. But there's a harmony there. You want to get that mixture right. So
some other things that a lot of guys ask us is why we recommend that one. One of the reasons that I personally like that, it's a sodium metasilicate base, and the foamy additive that Josh was talking about is not a real heavy sud. So between those two properties, when you mix it with the hypochlorite and you're putting it on the surface, it'll lay a nice even sud across the entire surface. But the most important part to me in that mix is that it dissipates quickly. And when you're cleaning houses or you're cleaning vertical surfaces, when the sud disappears and you're getting ready to rinse, the less sud you have on the surface, the easier it is to get everything off of the surface. If you're laying something with too heavy of a sud, you can spend all day rinsing and still accomplish the exact same result that you would with something like this. Between that one and Big Green Bruce, one of the reasons that we like them is they're both so mild in how they attack the surface that they're actually considered more of our eco-friendly products. They're a little safer for the skin, they're a little safer to deal with, and in the scheme of things, they're less aggressive than some of the other products that we use. We have a lot of guys that like to use another product that we call Hellbender. We have another one that's also called Berserker. They're both solid products. They are a little bit higher on the pH scale. They're a lot more alkaline than everything else, and those are more aggressive cleaning. As we move into our next one that we're going to, it is Stucco. Those two kind of become a little bit more popular there because when we're cleaning vinyl surfaces, even though you're letting the hypochlorite do the work, you're only really targeting an N ratio of a 0.3 to a 1% mix of hypochlorite on the surface. Well, as soon as you jump up to something like stucco or brick, which we're going to talk about in a minute, the stucco, because of how porous it is and basically how bumpy it is, everything sticks there. So by going with something a little more aggressive, up in your mix from that, instead of that 0.3% that we were talking about, you can go all the way up to, starting with a 0.5% mix up to a 1 or 1.2% mix. That's going to basically give you the overall clean. It's going to look a lot deeper, it's going to be easier, and you don't have to work as hard from the contractor's perspective. When you're using those kind of detergents and you're throwing things up there, your Boss, your Big Green Bruce, because of the chemical base that they leave certain surfaces looking nicer than others. And what I mean to that is when you're throwing things on the surface like glass or any kind of metal trim work where you got doorknobs, you got door knockers, stuff like that, it leaves it with a little bit higher of a gloss. And it's not as aggressive on, say, the vinyl or the stucco or the actual surface that you're cleaning, but it leaves a nicer finish on some of those other surfaces that are around the home that kind of make things pop. And then jumping up to the aggressive things like Hellbender, Berserker, they'll actually do the maximum lifting from the surface itself to really go through everything.
So just to jump on some of the comments, Jason Ensley's asking the mixture for the Boss. We're going to focus on mixtures later?
No, we can talk about it as we go. So when you're mixing Boss in with the hypochlorite solution, you want your N ratio to be anywhere in the 0.03 to 0.05. What does that mean? Roughly, you want 1 capful per gallon of hypochlorite that you're using. That's kind of a rough ballpark. It's really the same for a lot of these that you're using for just general purpose house washing because you only need so much of it to do the job. And anything that you're going beyond that, you're really just wasting the chemical as you're going through it because it's only going to clean so much. It's only going to do so much onto the surface.
So just to put it in a more specific range, your 3% ratio, was it 0.3 or 3%?
0.3 for the Boss, 3% for the bleach.
0.3% of the Boss. Pardon?
I'm saying this wrong, sorry. All right, 0.03 for the Boss. When you're hitting the surface, that's kind of where your target wants to be. The hypochlorite solution, your starting ratio should be the 0.3. And it just kind of gradually goes up from there.
So 0.3 times in ounces is about 1/3 of an ounce. So capful is what he was talking about. So that's That's about the ratio. Now, that, of course, that is your starting ratio, because in certain applications you're going to find that adding more of the boss is going. That is the boss, right?
Yeah.
Adding more of the boss is going to give you a better performance in certain cases. So, what's your max end that you're recommending as far as adding? How many ounces of this are we going to be getting into our 5-gallon container?
And really, there is no max on them. For all of them, it's kind of going to be something that it's tuned to your rig and how you're doing different cleaning tasks. But I mean, there's some guys that in a 5-gallon bucket, if they're downstreaming, I mean, they'll put a half a gallon of that in with 3.5 gallons of bleach and then top it off with water. And they're using it because they want it to act as more of a surfactant in that case. And if the surface for some reason is absolutely trashed, they'll use that to kind of, like you said earlier, emulsify some of the dirt, and it'll pull it away from the surface a little better.
All right. Where are we going next? So we talked about the stucco and drive it. Of course, some of these mixtures are going to work well for just the general cleaning, though. We're not taking any staining off of the surface, and then especially if it's something metallic staining, rust and that kind of thing. So we're going to touch on that a little bit later. So the next surface that we were going to talk about is asphalt shingles. So asphalt shingles is is another characteristic, versus the vinyl siding. The asphalt shingles are almost a good surface for things to grow. So the main thing that we're seeing on the surface is cyanobacteria. So you're getting stuff growing on the surface, your moss and that sort of thing. And the reason it's growing there is because you basically got a flower pot for it to grow into. So you're really trying to kill that. So you're going to use a stronger mixture of sodium hypochlorite, but you have to be careful what kind of detergents you add to it to get your foaminess or your bubbles. And this is where surfactant is most common term that everybody believes that you're adding to the bleach, but it's really a foaming agent. And that foaming agent also behaves as a surfactant. It allows the water to, breaks the surface tension of the water molecules, makes it lay out flatter, and it keeps it staying there. You'll find that those types of things are going to grow on your north side of the building, the area that gets the least amount of sun. And especially around here in Maryland, you'll know that the more trees, the worse that it is. You want to talk about the mixtures?
Yeah, so something that's different about roof cleaning than just about any other task. Roof cleaning, specifically asphalt shingles, if you put a degreaser on them, and that's really any degreaser, because the shingle is oil-based, if you put something on there that's designed to lift oils, or degrease in this case, it can actually deteriorate the shingle. So because of that, instead of using something like Boss or Hellbender, or really any of the degreasers that we carry, we got a product that's called Maximus Foam. Has absolutely no cleaning properties whatsoever, but it's designed to lay you got it right there? It's designed to lay as thick of a sud as possible. Where that kind of comes into play is everything that's growing on the roof. You got your organic bacterial growth, you got your moss, you got your lichen, you got your Gladiocapsula magma, all that stuff that's there. To get it off, the only thing you need is a hypochlorite solution. So where your siding and your stucco and that stuff, you're aiming for a lot lower of a mix. On something like a roof mix, you're looking for an N ratio of somewhere between 2 and 5% hypochlorite to actually be hitting the surface. At 5%, a lot of you guys are going to think, well, that's a really hot mix, and it is, but there's certain instances where you need it to get that hot. Because a lot of these, it's a general rule of thumb, you kind of got to play with them, but when it comes to roof cleaning, as long as you're not running off and killing plants, the roof can take as much as you want to put on it. So unless you're truly wasting chemical and just flooding the surface, it almost doesn't matter how aggressive you go with it, as long as you're keeping in mind that you're trying not to kill anything that's growing on the ground. And like,
Here's a question. So
yeah.
if there's a lot of material, a lot of plant life around the house, the shrubs and so forth, would you cover those if you're going to do a roof with a heavy hot mix?
Yeah, so I don't know if you can hear him, he doesn't have a mic on. The question was asked, if you lay too hot of a mix, do you have to worry about any of the surrounding vegetation? So yes, you do, because that stuff's designed to target organic growth. Well, what's the definition of organic growth? Not only does that mean Josh, not only does that mean me, but that also means the plants that are around you.
Anything with carbon or hydrogen molecules.
Yeah. So to protect them, we got a couple different choices. You can use something that's called sodium thiosulfate. It's a neutralizer for bleach. It basically pulls all the activeness of bleach out of it so that everything that runs off is neutralized. The other thing you can do is there's a lot of guys that use lime to put it around the surface, around like the dirt that surrounds vegetation, or just constantly having a guy watering. And in both of those cases, having a guy watering is almost required. Another reason I like telling people that for roof cleaning is if you're on the roof and you fall off, there's a guy watering, he can call 911 for you. If you're working by yourself, you don't really have that option. But as far as covering plants go, unless they're in a way that the gutter's like bleeding right onto it, or the gutter is dumping literally right into the tree of something, just water them down and laying some neutralizing product around them. That's more than enough for what a lot of guys
And
need
of course,
to do with them.
the solution to pollution is dilution. So you have to rinse before, during, and after these applications and be conscious of that. Of course, you can always use plastic, but there's other side effects to using plastic.
So our next surface that we're going to kind of touch on is stone, concrete, and walkways. And this one kind of gets split into two categories. You got residential cleaning and then you got commercial cleaning. When it comes to residential cleaning, sidewalks, patios, retaining walls, a lot of what you're seeing, again, is just organic growth. The other stuff that you have to deal with on the commercial side of things is you're actually cleaning up foot traffic. You're cleaning tire marks from people driving places. You're cleaning grease stains if it's at restaurants, and you're cleaning just all kinds of crap that just gets basically crushed into the surface. So that's where some of your heavier degreasers come into play. If you're doing something on a residential application, the hypochlorite solution you should be using, you can kind of try to target a 2% mix to actually hit the surface with. That should be more than enough to take care of any organic growth that's on residential sidewalk. And a lot of times you don't even need like a heavy surfactant because it's truly just organic growth that's there. It's very rare that you see, gum on a homeowner sidewalk. It's very rare that you see grease stains all over a homeowner sidewalk unless it's the back patio and that's where their grill's sitting or something like that. As we kind of move into the commercial side of things, we talk about degreasers, and I think this is one of Josh's favorites to talk about, so I'll let him grab that.
So for degreasing, and this might be something I should have dropped in with the stone, concrete, and walkways. You're cleaning. There's two. Cleaning off of the surface, you're doing more, there's different things that you might have to do to clean a surface. In certain cases, it may be cleaning a stain where it's actually adhered to the surface, where that's where acids come into play. But specifically talking about heavy soils, that's where you need your strong detergents. And our favorite strong detergent is Nasty. And as I always like to say, so strong you can dissolve bodies in it. It has an extremely high pH, which makes it break down just about anything that is, any oil-based, any soil-based stain material on the surface, not so much a stain, but it will also remove stains too because of how strong it is. It's super aggressive and has a very broad dilution ratio that can be used effectively to clean a surface. We do sell it for a lot of different cleaning industries. We get it for just commercial buildings, but it's also very popular in the commercial kitchen cleaning applications. Lots of dumpster pads, walkways, sidewalks, gas stations. Even very good for spot cleaning to get gum up without having to use heat. So in the absence of a hot water pressure washer, Nasty is really good for cleaning that too. So, but once again, it's got a super high pH. You can apply it super strong, but if you're using it in some of your soft wash applications, you want to know what mixture you're putting on the surface. You can certainly go full strength, but if you don't want to burn people's plants in certain, yard work, landscaping, that sort of thing, be cautious with your high pH and very aggressive cleaners, so that you don't hit it to hit delicate surfaces too that can't handle it. So
You mind saying what's in? So between Nasty and Hellbender and Bitchin' Kitchen, they're probably our most aggressive products. Mind sharing what makes them most aggressive?
Nasty is a mixture of sodium hydroxide and potassium hydroxide, as well as a solvent degreaser. So it's taking degreasing properties from all of its all the areas where we find them in the chemical industry. The Bitchin' Kitchen also using mostly potassium hydroxide. Potassium hydroxide seems to work really well on food-based oils and stains, so that's why it's a great kitchen cleaner. They use it for cleaning the hoods and all that, all the aspects of a commercial kitchen. But you'll even find that for some reason, even if you have the hottest mixture of potassium hydroxide, sometimes you need the sodium hydroxide and the solvent out of Nasty to break down, like peanut oil in particular is one that Nasty works on better. Then you've got Hellbender, which is just about all sodium hydroxide. Nice thing about sodium hydroxide is it's super cheap. So it's good for just your general cleaning and oil stains and that sort of thing, but the Hellbender is a neat tool in your toolbox because the sodium hydroxide is also very similar to our stripping agents for wood surfaces. So if you find yourself, you've got oil stains, but you're also dealing with a lot of decks and a lot of wood surfaces, I would probably lean towards the Hellbender if I want to have my high pH cleaner for, all sorts of applications.
So those would kind of be the most aggressive products that you could carry for commercial degreasing. On the other scale of things, you have an entire eco-friendly line starting with, like I said, my favorite is the Boss. After that, we have Powerbolt, which is an industrial grade solvent. That one's awesome for basically because it's safe for just about every surface. We got a product called Big Green Bruce, and we have another product that's called Orange Potion. I think that one's probably the most eco-friendly one.
It is. The Orange Potion is an orange oil-based degreaser, so it is organic. It is biodegradable. It is, of course, very expensive because it is eco-friendly. We got that great eco-friendly label that always seems to drive the price up, but it also is very concentrated, so it's going to go a great distance. That's going to be really good in also areas where you might have, you have to be conscious about human interaction with the surface. So in school buses and
Playgrounds.
All around areas where you have a lot of human interaction with the surface, that's safer to use so that you don't have to worry about it giving off bad, like really strong aromas that's going to make people, react to that. And it smells pleasant too, so we got that too.
Pleasant's an understatement. That one literally smells like oranges when you open it up. Some of the things when it comes to aggressive versus eco-friendly, a huge thing in commercial cleaning is EPA compliance. And so that's kind of where you fall into wanting the most aggressive product on the market, Nasty, to maybe wanting something that's a little more eco-friendly. Even though it doesn't satisfy 100% of the EPA's requirements, it is some of the closest things that you can get to being on par with what their level is for a lot of it. And then, of course, the more aggressive you go with any of these products, like Nasty or Hellbender, you got to keep in mind safety. So every single one of these can do damage to your skin when they're, talking about having sodium hydroxide, having potassium hydroxide in it. All that stuff is dangerous. All that stuff is something where if you're atomizing it or if you're aerosolizing it, you want to have either safety glasses on or you want to have, at least sunglasses. They do something for you. Same thing with gloves and everything protecting your skin, because Nasty is so strong that one of our customers had to get a skin graft from it. And that's just, that just shows how aggressive it is. And it's not that they're intended to do something like that. It's the target, the stain that they're specifically targeting just happens to line up with some of the stains that, are our skin. So on to our last topic will be mineral staining, and this is where acids really fall into play. This is a huge one because it's the difference between cleaning, it's the difference between sanitizing and restoration work. What do I mean by that? You can clean a surface, but if there's rust stains there, they're going to stay there. So we have a product that's called Ruster Buster. It's a very solid product. It is a hydrofluoric solution, and it's basically used to whatever shouldn't be on the surface as far as mineral staining. It can work on efflorescence, it can work on calcium deposits, it can work on rust. It'll pull it out of the surface, and as long as you dilute it to the right amount, it'll actually basically just remove the mineral staining that's there.
So let me elaborate on what you're saying here. So with acid removing stains from surfaces, it's actually breaking down a very microscopic level of layer of the outer layer of the surface that you're trying to clean. So it's not just breaking down the stain, but it's also got to get down to that last layer of skin, so to speak, to remove that stain. And that's why we have to go the direction of an acid versus just some other cleaning agent to break down what's stuck on the surface.
Yep, very true. So we're going to kind of list a couple ratios here for them. If you're doing something like vinyl cleaning or, actually, yeah, before I go into that, before you do any kind of rust removal, you have to clean the surface first. Doesn't matter what the surface is, you got to make sure there's nothing else on the surface.
Remove the soil from the surface.
Yeah, before you start targeting these specific mineral staining. And that goes the same for calcium and efflorescence too. So you clean the surface, you wait for it to completely dry, and then this is one of those things where you directly apply it just to that area, and you're working specifically to target that one stain. So when you're working when you're working using Ruster Buster and just targeting a rust stain on vinyl, you can dilute it up to 50 to 1, and that's more than enough concentration to take rust off of vinyl. When it comes to working your way up, asphalt shingles kind of fall in the next category. You can go up to 30 to 1, and it can still be effective. And above that, if you're targeting stucco specifically, you can do 20 to 1. And then the hardest surfaces to remove rust from, in my experience, you got stone, concrete, and then actual block. When you're cleaning something like that, you can go as aggressive as 1 to 1, and there's sometimes that just because of how porous the surface is, that it's not going to draw it completely out of the surface. But under the right circumstances, anywhere from 1 to 1 to 5 to 1 is a solid ratio for targeting those specific stains on that surface. And that's, again, that's just using Ruster Buster. There's a few other products that we carry that'll do the same task, but under ideal circumstances, those can pull usually a good enough amount of the stain off that you're happy with it, and the end result is something that you're going for.
Now, of course, we skipped over one thing. We wanted to talk about when using your high pH degreasers, after you're done cleaning a surface, you should consider neutralizing the surface for certain applications. In particular, whenever you're cleaning wood surfaces that are very, they're not just porous, but they're absorbing the chemicals that you're applying there. So if you're using a high pH detergent to clean a wood surface, after you get done, if you're going to especially if you're going to recoat the surface, you want to try to return that pH to neutral. So you've got it up there, you know, it's closer to 10 to 12 pH. We want to bring that down somewhere around 7. So that's where you're going to introduce your oxalic acid. You can even in some cases use Ruster Buster as a neutralizer, but we need to use an acid then to bring the pH back down on the at the surface before we start to reapply any kind of coating or let it just sit that way. Oxalic acid is the most popular on the wood cleaning side of things. So,
and one of the reasons you kind of want to do that, we'll just take concrete for an example. If you're using something that is so aggressive that it can literally take the pH and raise it all the way up to, what'd you say the pH of nasty was?
It's like 13.1.
So let's say somehow you leave so much on the surface that it brings it all the way up there. That surface will actually get dirtier faster. So it doesn't matter how you're neutralizing it, but like you said, you want to bring that as close to 7 as you can, because if you're not doing something properly, that beautiful sidewalk that you just spent hours cleaning, I've actually seen circumstances where in 2 to 3 weeks of enough foot traffic, because it's so out of balance with where it's supposed to be, it will actually attract more staining, more stuff sticks to it, and it'll look like crap in 3-4 weeks time, no problems. Another thing that he said, you can balance it with another chemical, but you can also dilute the crap out of it and hope that you're bringing it to a close enough pH level.
And if you're properly rinsing, that is the intent. If you're getting enough of the detergent off the surface, that will help to return it to neutral. But of course, wood is one of those, as a natural surface, it's a little bit different than, of course, your masonry surfaces.
Yeah, there's a few exceptions to a lot of these rules, and not that you guys have to stick to any of the ratios that we were talking about, but all of this is more of a general rule of thumb for just general purpose cleaning. There's going to be circumstances where you have to go way more aggressive, and there's going to be circumstances where you don't need nearly as much. The key is finding the exact amount of solution that you need so that you're not wasting chemical, so that you're not doing any damage, and so that you're just cleaning it and making the chemical process do the work for you, as opposed to you physically doing the pressure washing and the work for you. Anything you want to add about ratio before we open it up?
Be considerate of the fact that, you know, we'll elaborate on this in our next video, possibly. We realize that our customers are using a lot of different application methods. So there is a little bit of a learning curve as far as understanding what that means when you're applying it with your chemical injector versus your soft wash system versus your X-Jet. You know, and 12-volt pumps. So you got to kind of sit down and do the math. It's a pain in the neck. We'll try to elaborate on those formulas as we find clearer ways to express them as well. But you know, it's a learning curve, and you should experiment. You know, all of our chemical manufacturers are going to recommend that you do a test area on the surface before you actually commit to spraying something over the entire surface, or you know, the whole building or the whole wall. So you know what you're spraying up there, and it's okay to start on the conservative mixture side. It's better to start on the conservative mixture side and add the strength as opposed to just starting at full strength, because you're going to be wasting material if you go full strength. You can also certainly damage a lot of surfaces. You know, like I said, nasty will dissolve bodies. So anything else that I should?
Yeah. Nope, that fast it went up ahead. It'll come back. Keep going.
Okay. So we should.
Oh yeah. No, I remember it. It's actually you're saying. We can sell you all the stuff to have a cleaning process and make it actually work. But for you to actually use it in a real world scenario and make it work, and make it functional, and actually profit from it, that's an art. And that's something that can't really be taught. That's something you gotta fumble through.
You murdered it.
I did.
You
I went a little further. This is my saying.
Mixing chemicals is a science. Using them to clean is an art. That's the saying.
I was going somewhere different. I was basically going with, you know, the whole practice makes perfect thing.
Yeah. How do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice. He just learned that this week.
I just learned that right. All right, so with that in mind, we're going to jump to our first question for the audience. And what I want to do is, whatever your answer is, go ahead and type that in the comments section. And whoever gets the answer first will receive a container of Powerbolt. So our question is, name a kind of cyanobacteria most commonly grown on roofs in the northern hemisphere. So we did say it once during this seminar. Hopefully someone picked up on it.
Unfortunately, we broke it up. We separated it pretty well.
Yeah.
We didn't want to make it too easy.
It's to see if you're paying attention. Hopefully somebody gets it. But we have any questions from the audience?
Nathan asked, do we sell something that strips and removes deck stain? Yes, we have Hellbender, which that was the high pH cleaner. We also have some other strippers, Matamex paint remover, which is it's a commitment, let's say. It's a very strong chemical. It'll get any stain off the surface, but Hellbender is the best place to start. And Nathan, if you need that, call me. I'll hook you up with that. As far as lichen, that just popped up. Lichen, you can kill.
I think these are answers to.
Oh, the cyanobacteria. I didn't realize that. Maybe it should be answer colon. So no, algae and lichen are not the answer so far. Good try. Well, lichen is technically a cyanobacteria, but that's not the one that we mentioned in the video.
Yeah, didn't say that one.
Actually, lichen works with the cyanobacteria.
It's
a symbiotic relationship. So, real quick, we should drop in the coupon code, right?
Yep.
What is it that they're getting with the coupon
You
code?
can get $10 off a 5-gallon bucket of Powerbolt.
So we're giving $10 off a 5-gallon bucket of Powerbolt if you use the coupon code POWERBOLT10. And that's no spaces, POWERBOLT10.
And that code is good for 1 week starting this afternoon.
On dirtkiller.com.
On dirtkiller.com.
Dirtkiller.com.
So, what other questions we got?
Still, everybody dropping the lichen.
I like to think that means that we answered all of your questions during the seminar, and we take that as
Well, I mean, technically, lichen is a type of cyanobacteria. That's not the one that you were going for.
That was hurtful. I was really going for the answer, Gloeocapsulomagma. Solely because we like saying that word, and it really makes people go, what? So lichen counts?
Yeah, it does.
All right, who was the first person to say it?
So it looks like Sin Stern.
Sin Stern? I'm going to give him one of our emails.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk to him.
Okay.
Algae was a little bit too broad of a term, Michael.
Yep. So, Stan, if you hold tight, we're going to have you're going to shoot a direct message to him?
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to have a way to contact you in a minute, and as soon as you reach out, we'll go ahead and get you, we'll ship you something.
So we should take a second to talk about something that is unrelated to this particular seminar that we set up, which was we want everybody to know that right now we are open 8 to 5 Monday through Friday for just a regular business season. There is some limitations that we have, of course, because of the COVID-19 stuff going on. We do ask that everybody wears their masks when they come into the store. We are having limited visits in the actual showroom, but we're trying to be as flexible as possible with that. So we encourage you to call ahead in case you need anything in particular. If you need equipment, we'll work to try to demonstrate or at least look at some of the equipment. But for our customers that are just getting products and tools that we can do curbside pickup, we really appreciate if you guys can give us a call ahead for that. And we prefer credit card in almost all cases as opposed to cash right now. It just makes things smoother when we're doing our curbside stuff. And technically speaking, right now we are not open on Saturdays. We are going to try to make sure that all of the advertising that we have is uniform to that. But if you need something, call us ahead of time. Ask for one of us, and we'll try to make arrangements when we can.
And you can always shop online 24/7.
Yeah, and of course, dirtkiller.com. We're doing our best to polish that website as quick as possible.
I'm going to say a coupon code one more time.
All right, so once more, the coupon code for $10 off the 5-gallon bucket, which we should tell them that right now is how much? I think, no? Okay, well, you just have to go ahead. Don't worry. It's $10 off of whatever it says on the internet.
We'll surprise you.
And that was Powerbolt 10, Powerbolt 10.
All right. Also mention the Dirt Monkey sweepstakes.
Oh yeah, we have a Dirt Monkey sweepstakes right now. We're debuting one of our original Dirt Killer lines, and what we're going to do is, if you find us on Facebook, there is a link to enter the sweepstakes. You could win a 5-gallon a minute direct dry pressure washer, and hopefully, I believe the link is on the same page as this seminar, right?
Well, it's on the Facebook page.
See our Facebook page for that.
Yeah.
It's also on our website, in our blog. So
Facebook, yeah. Book a face, website, blog.
There you go. Something like that. Anyway, check us out online.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
And let's kill some dirt.
Dirt Killer. Let's kill some dirt.